Hello, welcome to today's episode of Juicing the Numbers. I'm your host, Joshua Tracy.
And I'm Corwin Heller.
And we're going to be talking about a hypothetical NFL question, keeping our NFL topics rolling since we feel as though we've done a lot of baseball recently, trying to mix it up. This idea is a child of Corwin's mind.
My little baby.
Yeah, where we're talking about what would happen if the NFL had an expansion akin to what the NHL did when Vegas joined the mix.
Yes. So basically, I'll give a little background of the rules for that expansion draft, but what it comes down to is Vegas couldn't get enough players out of free agency in the draft to fill out a competitive NHL roster. The NHL was like, fuck it, we don't want this team to suck like all the other expansion teams in all of sports history. So we're going to give them players from current teams. And obviously, if it was a free-for-all, they would just take all the NHL superstars. And that's not really fair. So what they decided on was allowing teams to protect essentially their top two lines of forwards and their top line and a half of defensemen. And their top goalie, and said everyone else is free to get picked. Go get them. So what it ended up being was teams had the option of protecting 7 forwards, 3 defensemen, and one goalie, or 8 skaters regardless of where they play, and a single goalie. So basically, if you really wanted to protect a ton of forwards or a ton of defensemen, you would have the option to, but it would give you 2 less skaters to protect overall. Most teams didn't do that because it seems silly to do it, but we'll get into that. There was also a caveat that players with 2 or more years of experience in the NHL were eligible, so it wouldn't allow any rookies or second-year players, so guys new to the team, up and coming, weren't just going to get shipped off out of the farm system. And so under these rules, each of the 30 teams would lose 1 top 4 defenseman and or a third line forward. And you couldn't really just copy and paste that over to the NFL just because the NFL rosters are literally over twice as large and the difference between offense and defense is much bigger. So I spruced it up a little bit. And what I decided on, which was a mix of available talent and general fairness to both teams, was that NFL teams could protect 8 offensive players and 8 defensive players, or 15 players mixed between offense, defense, and special teams. We'll get into it, but much like the NHL, not a lot of teams did that. I think only a couple, 1 or 2 actually did. And I decided to have it only be rookies that were ineligible from being selected just because, well, they don't have a farm system the way the NHL does, so it's not quite the same level of fairness. So rookies are protected, and that's it.
Real quick, before we keep going, the last expansion draft in the NFL was 1999 when the Cleveland Browns joined the mix.
Okay.
Did you look into what the rules were for that one?
Absolutely not, because I'm sure it would be... I didn't really think about looking into it until I was like halfway done with the AFC. And at that point, I thought, man, I'm way too deep to start this over, and I don't want to find something that would severely change how I'm doing this.
It's actually interesting. I think I like... It's tough to say. I think I like yours more. But this one...
I hope so.
Format. Each of the 30 at this point existing teams, because I actually guess there was there must have been a 2002 expansion draft for the Houston Texans I didn't think about.
I thought it was 2001.
I guess 2002 would have been their first season. No, it must have been 2002 then, because they'd host the expansion draft the same year that the team would be founded, wouldn't they?
I think 2001 was the first year David Carr... I'll look it up while you talk.
All right. Each of the 30 existing teams were required to expose 5 players to the draft. Cleveland was allowed to select between 30 and 42 players.
Wait, they only gave up 5 players?
You only had to put 5 players forward to be put into the expansion draft.
Wow.
So you got to protect out of your 52-person roster. 53-person roster. You only had to protect. You got to protect all of 48 of them. So that's huge. And then no more than 2 players could be drafted from a single team, which I think is a really good rule. After drafting 1 player from a team, that team has the option to remove up to 2 of the remaining 4 players from the draft pool.
Wow.
So after you got a person, which actually seems kind of weird since you can't, no more than 2 players. So you can draft 2 players from a single team, but nothing more than that. And then after you got 1 poached from, you got to protect 2 other ones, which is crazy.
Yeah, that's not a lot of...
Now that they say that, though, it seems honestly surprising that the Browns were ever competitive.
Or the Texans, too. Yeah, like, that's fucking wild.
The Texans are just getting competitive. They were never competitive before 3 years ago, 4 years ago.
Like, people talk shit about the Browns never having anything to work with, and no fucking shit, they never had anything to work with.
This is actually, now that I think about it, this is awful. I was wavering, but no, this is really bad.
There were, like, I wanted to start this where you could protect 10 on each side of the ball, and there were teams where I was struggling to find players worthy of protecting after 8 or 9 players. I don't know how you would protect, like, 48 players and just be like, you could have the worst 4 fucking players on our team.
Yeah, these are practice squad guys at best. Like,
truly. Like
4th string dudes.
Nobody really wants them on their, like, they provide a role for their team, don't get me wrong, and they're all good players, but not cornerstones of your franchise.
Or not even like second string. You know, they have a second contract. Right. They're not on the rookie deals, but they're not like big contracts. Like those dudes, you know,
right?
The dudes that basically made Vegas Golden Knights a competitive team. You know, they're not my top line forwards. Mm-hmm. They might not even be my second line forwards, but they're really close to it. They're like my upper third, lower second line forwards. My upper third pair, lower second pair defensemen.
Yeah, basically it was you gave up one second line defenseman and 1 third line forward was what it came down to.
And then the rest can be figured out in free agency.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, actually not. Yeah, no, it is no shock that the Browns and the Texans sucked forever.
I'm almost disappointed that you only thought you liked my idea better.
Well, because I had only exposed myself to this about 30 seconds before I said it.
Okay, fair enough. All right. Just to clarify, the Houston Texans expansion draft was held on February 18th, 2002.
Ooh, points for Josh.
Josh is correct. I forgot what I was talking about before we went into this.
I think we're about to go into what we were going to do. What you did with this?
Oh, perfect. AFC or NFC? Do you want to start with?
AFC.
I figured. I already had the AFC up. So, yeah, basically, just to reiterate, 8 on offense, 8 on defense, or 15 total. So I started off with the Steelers because I know them by far the best of any NFL team. On offense, we protected Ben Roethlisberger, Juju Smith-Schuster, James Conner, James Washington, Alejandro Villanueva, Ramon Foster, Marquise Pouncey, and David DeCastro.
So, real quick, Juju and James Conner, wouldn't they be protected by default since they're rookies?
It's not rookies in their rookie year, not rookie contracts.
But I thought it was rookies with 2 years, more than 2 years experience. Wouldn't this be James Conner's second year? So wouldn't he be by default?
So I really just copied and pasted that line from the top, and I guess I just forgot to change it. I really just meant to say no rookies at all. So I'm just going to delete that and just have it say no rookies in general. So anyone who has played in the NFL is good to go.
Okay, so like no one that just
got drafted. Yeah.
Although I guess an expansion draft would be held before the draft. So
typically it would.
Yeah.
But we're doing this in July.
Yeah, no, I'm just thinking out loud at this point.
Yeah, the problem, I wanted to do it with previous rosters before the rookies came in so we wouldn't have to have that issue. But that changes the makeup of a 53-man roster so much. I had to do it the most current ones and then just take out the rookies individually.
That's fair. This is also just good so I can get all my questions out of the way now because I also see like Lamar Jackson for the Ravens. Yeah. I just want to make sure I was on the same page.
So basically what it came down to for the Steelers and most teams was most, if not all of their offensive line I only left off Matt Feeler, our right tackle, because he's never been a starting right tackle in the NFL before, and I want to protect the young core around Big Ben with Juju, James, and James. And this was actually really simple for me. Like, the Steelers were pretty obvious candidates. James Washington was really only the surprise pickup there, but I believe in his skill set so much that go for it. On defense, it was Cam Hayward, Stephon Tuitt. Yes. So on defense, it was Cam Hayward, Stephon Tuitt, Joe Hayden, Javon Hargrave, T.J. Watt, Sean Davis, Steven Nelson, and Mike Hilton.
So I know you would get to this via the expansion team tab that you have here, but who would you say is one, maybe two of the biggest unprotected guys on this list?
The Steelers were the hardest for me. Leaving off guys like Vince Williams. There was a couple other young players. I left off our first-round pick last year in Terrell Edmonds. Defense was tough just because the Steelers, despite having, big holes on defense, have a lot of marquee players that I know from experience this defense would really fall apart on without. That wasn't a grammatically correct sentence, but I think together we've gone past that. I originally had Terrell Edmonds here ahead of Steven Nelson, but Steelers cornerbacks are so fucking bad that I figured having that safety didn't quite add as much value as, adding a quote-unquote marquee cornerback. So, yeah. Defense, I found, was significantly harder to do than offense.
I honestly, I kind of figured that would be the case.
Mm-hmm. I tried to do at least one player from every position group. So, defensive end, interior line, inside, outside linebacker, safety, cornerbacks. After, filling in the best players there. Thankfully, the Steelers kind of have at least a player at every position grouping, so it wasn't that hard. That made it the easiest of the group out of any team, also because I know the defense better than any other team, so that's the way it is. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I don't want to get in this deep really on every team, just because this might be a 4-hour episode, but we are at least going to talk about every player on every team, at least mention them.
All right, I think that's fair.
So for the Ravens, Ravens, there is just a severe lack of talent on your team anywhere. So on offense, they protected Lamar Jackson, Ronnie Stanley, Marshall Yanda, Orlando Brown, Hayden Hurst, and Mark Ingram.
Mark Ingram's on the Ravens?
Yes.
Wow.
I wanted to protect more offensive linemen, but their other offensive linemen aren't that great.
Okay.
And I might as well mention this now. There's very much not 8 players there because the Ravens have the best kicker and arguably the best punter in the NFL. And I figured if I'm really struggling to fill out 8 on both sides of the ball, might as well protect those players because I know people joke that punters and kickers aren't real NFL players, aren't real NFL athletes, but they add so much to a team that I thought the Ravens and their forward-thinking ideas would be all about that. So I protected both Justin Tucker and Sam Cock. I don't know if his last name is actually pronounced Cock, but he's a Raven,
Today
so it is. Yep. But yeah, I protected their 3 best offensive linemen, their young quarterback, their young first-round tight end, and their hopefully bell cow running back. On defense, we had Brandon Carr, Tony Jefferson, Earl Thomas, Marlon Humphrey, Shane Ray, Brandon Williams, and Patrick Onwuasor. Onwuasor. I don't know how to pronounce his name. If you could help out, please do.
I have no idea. Onwuasor sounds right to me.
They have a tremendous defensive backfield, which I wanted to keep intact between Carr, Jefferson, Thomas, Humphrey. Gave them a pass rusher, an inside linebacker, and a defensive lineman. So tried to keep things balanced, even though they only got 7 players. There it is. Anything you want to say on the Ravens?
Not really. They're a relatively disinteresting team.
Yeah.
I don't know their depth players well enough to have any. I feel like the only team I'm going to have the ability to make comments on is going to be the Jets.
I felt the same way about the Steelers before I really dug into this.
Yeah. Do you have anybody that you didn't protect that you're like, all right, well that'll make a good depth piece or second string piece on an expansion team that you know offhand from the Ravens?
That I didn't protect?
That you did not protect?
Mark Andrews, Willie Snead was on there. Basically, they had a couple pass catchers that I could have protected instead of Mark Ingram because he's an old, worn-down running back. But at the same time, they are focusing so heavily on running the ball. I figured it's more important to have him there than a second tight end or an average wide receiver at best. But yeah, they really don't have a lot of talent on offense. So
no.
Let's move on to the Browns, which was, if you asked me 2 years ago, they probably would have been the hardest team to find talent for, and they were, outside of the Steelers, by far the easiest.
Okay.
They are so deep at roughly every position. On offense, Baker Mayfield, Odell Beckham Jr., Jarvis Landry, Nick Chubb, J.C. Treader, Joel Bitonio, Austin Corbett, and David Njoku. I literally didn't even have to look at their depth chart before picking these players because it was so straightforward and easy. They have 2 fantastic wide receivers, a fantastic running back, a great young quarterback, an absolutely dominating interior offensive line there, and one of the best young tight ends in the game. Fucking Browns are disgusting now.
Yeah, apparently.
On defense, they protected Myles Garrett, Olivier Vernon, Denzel Ward, Demarius Randall, Larry Ogunjobi, Sheldon Richardson, Joe Schobert, and Christian Kirksey.
I forgot they had Sheldon Richardson, too.
Yeah, they have a filthy defensive line.
Apparently so.
Myles Garrett, Olivier Vernon, absolute dominating edge rushers. Denzel Ward, dominating cornerback. Demarius Randall, poorly used safety cornerback hybrid that has been playing really well with the Browns. Larry Ogunjobi as another edge rusher piece. Sheldon Richardson on the defensive line to really lock down that interior. And then 2 severely underrated inside linebackers in Joe Schobert and Christian Kirksey. Yeah, any comments on the Browns?
Nothing in particular.
I just want to peek ahead at the expansion team to see who I... Yep, okay.
Who'd you pick from them?
Chris Hubbard, who is actually a former Pittsburgh Steeler, who is going to be their starting left or right tackle this year. I think it's left tackle for them, but I had him at right. Spoiler alert for the expansion team. Their tackles, their 2 bookend tackles, were really the only 2 weak points of that offense, if you could call them that, even though Chris Hubbard is actually quite a good piece at left tackle compared to options available to other teams. Yeah, so the Browns really just didn't have enough room on offense to really put anything together. So, well, to put anything, that was very poorly worded. Didn't have any room on offense to protect anyone else.
Right. No, I don't really have anything to say about the I mean, you picked a lot of marquee Browns players here. I mean, you have all the names I know and most of the names I don't know. So
it's weird saying how many marquee players they have. How many years do you think it's going to take for us to give up saying the fact that it's weird saying the Browns are really good?
For us, it might never be not weird because, like,
we love shitting on the Browns.
No, because we grew up with them like that. You know, it's the same way for like if you ever listen to Bill Burr talk about the Patriots, or the Red Sox for that matter. He grew up with them being awful,
right?
Like both those teams sucked for his entire life, and now they're good, and he still thinks it's the wildest thing in the world. Whereas you and I grew up with the Patriots and the Red Sox being great, and when they eventually suck, as all teams eventually suck, it's going to be like, wow, what happened to the Patriots and the Red Sox? And I think the Browns are going to be like that for us. We're like, they could go on a Patriots-esque run for 15 years, and we're still going to be like, wow, Browns really put it together for once, didn't they? Look at that.
I know this team literally hasn't played together yet with all the transactions they've had, But if there's any team built to make a Patriots-like run, it's the fucking Browns. And it's disgusting to say that, as we just discussed.
Right.
Moving on to the Bengals. Bengals were actually kind of hard. They were kind of the first team where I really, outside the Ravens, even though I kind of gave up on protecting Ravens players pretty early on, I actually had to really dig into the Bengals a little bit.
Because you didn't know who to protect, or because there was too many people to protect, or too few people to protect?
Not enough, and I just didn't know enough. Like, I knew from the start that the key for teams protecting players was protecting young skill position players and offensive linemen on offense, and actually the same thing on defense, young skill position players and the defensive line. And I just don't know enough about the Bengals' offensive line to really put it all together. So on offense, they protected A.J. Green, Tyler Boyd, Joe Mixon, Cordy Glenn, Billy Price, Andy Dalton, John Miller, and Tyler Eifert.
Do they still have John Ross in that team?
They do, but
I know he hasn't been good.
fairly certain they've given up on him.
Which is crazy, because isn't this only going to be like his second season?
This is going to be his third year.
But he lost one due to injury, right?
Yeah, he lost pretty much his entire rookie year to injury. He only caught like 43, 45 balls last year for like 500 yards, but he also scored like 8 touchdowns. So I didn't want to protect 3 wide receivers for them.
Yeah.
Although I could easily see them protecting him over Tyler Eifert because of how injury-prone he has been. But I wanted to have them have at least one tight end.
Such a weird team.
Yeah. If you notice, Andy Dalton was the 6th player I protected because I really didn't want to protect Andy Dalton, because why would an expansion team want Andy Dalton to be their quarterback?
I think an expansion team would take Andy Dalton in a heartbeat, though.
If there really wasn't any other options, which I knew from the start there was going to be, I could see that. But Andy Dalton isn't a kind of guy to grow with a young team.
No, but really I think he's a good mainstay.
I think he'd be a really excellent backup for them.
I think he'd be a good first 2 to 3 years of a starter if you can get the other pieces. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, he's going to be a dude who will like. He's not going to do anything crazy.
Right.
He's not going to be like a egomaniac. He's not going to take a lot of really weird risks and not let your team around it grow. He'll be there.
He would be really good to groom like a franchise quarterback that you draft.
Yeah.
Like so
this happened in February, and then the regular draft happened in April. Like,
right.
Dalton would be a great dude for those first 18 months.
Just so you know, the expansion team wouldn't get the first overall pick. They would get the second overall pick.
Right.
Just to give that fairness to the team that really fucking sucks and quote-unquote earned the first overall pick, they would give the expansion team the second pick. So in next year's upcoming draft, it's projected that Tua Tagovailoa or Justin Herbert at quarterback is going first overall. So there's absolutely room for them to go young quarterback early on and have a really good quarterback to groom for the future. But I didn't want to project that so far ahead because it's not directly before the draft. It's directly after.
Right.
So I wanted to fill all the bases and not leave a big gaping hole at quarterback.
Right.
But moving on. On defense, we had Carlos Dunlap, Geno Atkins, Drake Kirkpatrick, Jesse Bates, William Jackson III, Andrew Billings, Carl Lawson, and Sam Hubbard. They were actually a lot easier to do on defense. Really, Drake Kirkpatrick was the only guy who really didn't perform last year that they're still protecting, but he's still a somewhat young cornerback. But they have some really good young pieces. Carl Lawson and Sam Hubbard were fantastic last year. William Jackson has showed how great he is. Jesse Bates was phenomenal last year. Dunlap and Atkins are their marquee franchise players to really be the leaders on that defense. So defense was a lot easier for the Bengals than offense.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I don't know who any of those people are.
Really?
Yeah.
Not a single one?
Not a single one of them.
Dunlap and Atkins were like two of the big name guys when they did the Bengals Hard Knocks all those years ago. But they are, Geno Atkins was they were both Pro Bowlers every year for the past couple of years up until,
The name Atkins sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Everyone else I don't know. I also believe that Cincinnati doesn't deserve its sports teams.
Yeah, Cincinnati Bengals.
Aside from the Reds,
suck.
I think the Reds should stay there just for
They
continuity's sake. But
They also don't deserve Skyline Chili because that is just an embarrassment to food.
I've never even heard of that.
It's gross. It's like chili and spaghetti, I think.
What?
Yeah, I'm going to look it up just so Cincinnati fans don't fucking kill us.
Skyline Chili.
Yeah, it's like one of the grossest things I've ever eaten. It's a restaurant chain called Skyline Chili, and so it's spaghetti, chili, and like grated yellow, I'm assuming mozzarella or cheddar cheese
Looks
right
like
on
cheddar.
top. It's fucking gross.
We got that shit that comes in the can?
Yeah,
Didn't a Reds fan shotgun one of those when they traded for Puig?
probably. I don't remember that specifically.
I think I saw a Reds fan chug chili, like shotgun chili, like 3 cans of it or so after the Puig trade.
Yeah, so it's the 3-way Skyline Chili is their signature dish. Steaming spaghetti covered with our original secret recipe chili, topped with a mound of shredded cheddar cheese. They live by it in Cincinnati, and everyone I know who has been or lived near Cincinnati either will die on that hill of saying it's the best food on earth, or genuinely doesn't know why people eat it and thinks it's the most disgusting thing
So
ever.
it's Cincinnati's Vegemite.
Yes.
Okay.
I could not describe it any better.
All right, I'm with it then. Let's stop talking about Cincinnati.
Yeah, fuck them.
Oh,
You know
look
who's
at that.
next?
Yeah,
There it is,
okay, I
the
know this
New
team.
York Football Jets.
Yeah, tell
Josh,
me about them.
I'm going to let you talk all about this after I name the players I selected.
Okay.
So we protected Sam Darnold, Le'Veon Bell, Robbie Anderson, Quincy Enunwa, Chris Herndon, Kelsey Osemele, Brandon Shell, and Brian Winters on offense. And on defense, we had Leonard Williams, C.J. Mosley, Jamal Adams, Marcus May, Trumaine Johnson, Brian Poole, Brandon Copeland, and Avery Williamson. So let's start on offense. What's your opinion on this team we got here?
I think you protected all the right dudes on offense. I have no complaints. I wish we had better offensive linemen to protect. Brandon Shell and Brian
really
Winters,
had to
but
dig deep on offense.
I actually was looking to see who else we even had, and
all I know is that your center is truly awful.
We cut him.
Really, he was cut.
Yeah.
The only player I wish I protected that I didn't, just because I don't know why I just kind of threw it up, but I wish I protected Kelvin Beachum.
Kelvin Beachum. So that's what I was thinking. I was thinking Kelvin Beachum and I have the depth chart up in front of me. I had to look at it. I was hoping I wouldn't have to look at it. I can't. Brendan Quale. It's QVALE. I don't know how he says it. I'm going to say Quale.
That's a weird name.
White guy.
Interesting.
Yeah. They've both shown flashes, but neither one of them have been like that great. But you could also say that about Brandon Shell and Brian Winters. Winters, I think, probably being the best of that group.
Yeah.
But none of them have been especially impressive. So I think the players you selected make sense.
So I just wanted to add another caveat that I forgot to mention earlier. I was going to mention this for the expansion teams, but we might as well talk about this when we're doing protected players. I didn't take any contracts into account, any term length, any money, just because
that'd be way too much.
It would have been way too much, and things change. But I did take age into account. So the big reason why I didn't select Kelvin Beachum was he's like 33, 32, 33, and he was an all-pro when he was on the Steelers. Never lived up to it in San Diego, I believe, was where he played last, which is now L.A. So I figured I'd rather take younger interior linemen than an older left tackle who had a bit of a down year, but he is a very good player in his own right, and left tackle is very important. So
yeah. No, I think these are all fair. I mean, Chris Herndon's been very impressive in his rookie season. Quincy Enunwa, when he's been healthy, has been very good. Robbie Anderson has also been very good. And depending on his usage, Darnold is our future face of the franchise quarterback. And then Le'Veon Bell, Kelechi Osemele. Fuck. Those are both dudes that we acquired just this offseason, but who are supposed to be rather impressive at their respective positions. Mm-hmm. So makes sense to protect them both there.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, there's been other like offseason acquisitions like Jamison Crowder, but I don't see the point in protecting Jamison Crowder. So yeah, this all makes sense to me.
I was actually had to think about whether or not I was going to protect Le'Veon Bell just because of how many rumors there were about Adam Gase really not wanting him on the team. But he's such a good player when he's on the field that how do you not protect a guy like that?
Yeah, you'd have to.
Because he would be selected. Like
if they were to get rid of him, it wouldn't be for
protect
free.
Anyone else?
Like I'm saying, like this.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And you really wouldn't have to protect anyone at all outside of Sam Darnold if you didn't protect Le'Veon Bell because he would easily be the first guy selected.
Right.
What are your thoughts on defense? I actually had a harder time filling out the back end of this defense.
Why don't you read it out for the people
again? Okay, Leonard.
Did you do it the first?
I did do it the first time. Yeah.
Did you?
I did. I went straight through all the way down before handing it off to you.
Do it again. I don't think you did.
Leonard, I absolutely did.
Do it again.
Leonard Williams, C.J. Mosley, Jamal Adams, Marcus May, Trumaine Johnson, Brian Poole, Brandon Copeland, and Avery Williamson.
All right, so I'm not going to lie to you here. I have no idea who Brian Poole is. I had to look him up. He's a cornerback, but I had to look up who that is. I would have much rather you protected Steve McClendon.
Okay.
Yeah. Outside of that, this is fine. Brandon Copeland, I also had to look up just to make sure I knew who that was, and Avery Williamson is fine.
Okay. But you would have rather I selected Sheldon Richardson?
Steve McClendon. Sheldon Richardson's on our team.
Yeah. Wrong former Jet.
Yeah. Outside of that, Henry Anderson's also been fun. He's been pretty decent. I would have liked to seen Jachai Polite also stay, even though he was just drafted and I don't know what he looks like, but everyone says he's supposed to be good.
He can't be taken, so he doesn't need to be protected.
That's right. In this scenario, he hasn't played yet.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah,
I mean, outside
Brian Poole on Football Reference is listed as a safety, even though everywhere else I looked, he was a cornerback.
He's also listed on the Jets depth chart as a cornerback. So I'm going to say
in
Football
2018
Reference.
Under position on Football Reference, it's cornerback, defensive back, linebacker.
So he was just all over the place.
Yeah, he started the last 9 games for them.
I would have said if I was to pick a cornerback that's not one of the obvious ones, maybe Darryl Roberts instead.
So
the problem is here, none of these guys are really great. This is all just splitting hairs amongst people I just kind of like more.
Who was the guy you said was really fun that I didn't?
Steve McClendon and Henry, what's his face?
Henry Anderson?
Henry Anderson.
What position is he?
Wait, hold on. I was scrolling and now I lost everything I had. He should be a defensive line of some kind. I'm just trying to get a more precise definition based.
Do you know if he's a defensive tackle or not?
This is what I'm trying to find. I want to give you the right information instead of it just says defensive line. Yeah, that's all it says.
If you had to pick between the two, actually, I'm going to double check before I.
If I had to choose between McClendon or Anderson,
yes.
Fuck, that's actually tough. I think
Henry Anderson, just so you know, is 27. Sheldon Richardson's in his
Steve
30.
McClendon.
Steve McClendon. Fuck me. I should know this because he played for the fucking Steelers.
Oh, McClendon is 33, isn't he?
Yes.
Then I guess I would take Anderson.
Which was the big reason why I didn't protect him. Yeah, he's 33.
Yeah. No, that makes sense then.
Okay, so I just changed Brian Poole in here to Henry Anderson. I was going to offer which one you would protect just because I would have changed it in the selection because Steve McClendon was who I picked as nose tackle for the expansion team.
He's a very good nose tackle.
He is a very good nose tackle, but I figured the Jets are a very young team, not competing anytime soon.
I think we'll be competing this year.
And a 33-year-old nose tackle probably isn't the most important position player to protect. But I would, you know what? A guy with 7 sacks, 35 tackles, let's protect Henry Anderson.
But yeah, other than that, I think this is good. You protected the young core as well as some of the acquisitions on this side, most notably just C.J. Mosley. But Tremaine Johnson's been good when he's been healthy. What's the name of the fucking dude we picked up from Dallas 2 years ago?
What position?
Cornerback.
Oh,
With the broken foot.
Yeah.
Because I don't think he's on the team.
He's
this
a free
year.
agent right now.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't think he's on the
Marcus
team this
Claiborne.
year. Yeah, I would love to have seen Claiborne
Come back
and stay with the Jets and be productive. But even if that was the case, he's probably
Right.
too old at this point to protect.
I
I think
don't know how
he's
old he is.
late 20s, early 30s at this point because he played, I think, 4 years with Dallas before playing the 2 years with us.
It's Morris Claiborne, not Marcus. I don't know what I said. He's 29.
Yeah, so I could see that being just enough on the fence where the Jets would probably protect somebody a little bit younger.
Right.
So yeah, I think this all looks fine to me. The Jets have had a lot of busts on defense recently, so there's not too much there to protect. I would disagree that we're not planning on competing anytime soon. I would think
that's
that at the very
fair.
least,
I just wanted to say
I think at the very least, I personally think the Jets are very much trying to compete this season. I think if you were to disagree, the very latest you could say is next season.
I was going to argue it would be not this season, but next season. They would really try to push for competing roster, and for a 33-year-old, that's not in his timeline.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
that's what I meant by that.
And that's why they got rid of Snacks when they did, giving him to the Giants, in part because they had McClendon and they could use him, or at least they went out and got McClendon. I forget what the timeline was with his career. But also, nose tackle isn't... It's an important position when you have a really good one.
Right.
It's not a make-or-break position like a left tackle or a CB1 or a QB,
Right,
something
right.
to that effect.
I could not say that better.
Yeah.
Want to move on to the Patriots, or do you want to avoid that and stay with the Jets forever?
Actually, no, I'm very curious about the Patriots. So let's move on to the Patriots, because I think this could actually be an interesting one.
So I did the opposite of the Jets. I picked players regardless of age because I know that they're going to compete this year, and I then thought, well, Bill Belichick fucking hates old people and is so consistent with his turnover that I probably spent the most time on the Patriots out of any team just because I tried 3 or 4 different combinations that I just didn't know what Bill Belichick would do. So I really just tried to fit it all together and see, did that make a clear picture? So what I ended up with on offense was Tom Brady, Sony Michel, Julian Edelman, Isaiah Wynn, Shaq Mason, David Andrews, Joe Thuney, and Marcus Cannon, which is their entire offensive line, their second-year first-round pick, Tom Brady and Julian Edelman. Yeah, I mean, they don't have any tight ends on the roster worth keeping anymore. Their wide receivers outside of Julian Edelman are essentially Josh Gordon and nobody. And the only other guy I even considered on offense was Jarrett Stidham, who was their third-round QB pick this year. Just because I really like Stidham and what he can offer in the future. I think he went to a great team. But knowing Bill Belichick, I'm sure he would have protected his offensive line to the most complete way that he could and say, fuck it to that quarterback and whatnot. And then I also remembered he was a fucking rookie and I didn't have to protect him, which was the key part there.
I think the only interesting one with this offense would be Tom Brady, because I think for a while now there's been a debate whether or not Belichick wants Brady on the team versus Kraft wants Brady on the team, and this might have been Belichick's time to seriously
him.
straight up. 'Cause they wouldn't have to cut him. He wouldn't
Not
have
at
to
all.
not sign a renewal contract. All he had to do is just not protect him in favor of protecting a different player because there's a set amount, and that seems like he'd be able to convince Kraft to do. Not saying that would happen, because obviously we can't predict this in any way, but it would be an interesting conversation.
The only reason why I think that wouldn't happen is because they wouldn't get a compensation pick for him, and they would easily get a very high compensation pick if they lost out on Tom Brady.
Yeah,
So
I think the
this
only
might have
reason
been
I
the
think
political move to do it.
that's what I'm saying.
not
I
the
think
most
you're right for
effective way to
protecting him
do
because
it.
I think that's the most realistic solution, or most realistic conclusion to come to. But it would have made for an interesting question because while they wouldn't get anything back for him in this scenario, this could be seen as Belichick's way of finally showing that he can still win with a Patriots roster that doesn't include Tom Brady.
Yeah. So let's move on to defense.
Yep.
We had Danny Shelton, Stephon Gilmore, Patrick Chung, Devin McCourty, Jason McCourty, Kyle Van Noy, Donta Hightower, and Lawrence Guy. This was weird because they have a lot of important players on defense that are all really old. They just don't have a lot of young, proven talent. So I just went with guys that will perform best on the field and just hope that they could get another run in with Tom Brady.
What would you think about protecting one fewer person and then taking, which I guess two fewer people,
Right.
and then protecting Gostkowski?
I originally had that. That was the first thing I did.
That's probably what I would have done. 'Cause you know
have,
how Belichick loves his special teamers.
Right. So I didn't have Donta Hightower or Lawrence Guy protected, and I went with Gostkowski instead. But then I really thought, I think Belichick would see the value in protecting two more players that could provide value on defense rather than just one player who could provide on special teams.
Tough to know what goes through that guy's mind.
Yeah. So, like I said, I tried 4 or 5 different combinations here, and this is what I settled on. I would not argue with you if you wanted to go with Gostkowski instead.
I didn't think you would.
So let's move on to the Dolphins, which was fucking impossible because they are a void of talent.
Yeah. Everyone's old or shitty.
Or both.
Yeah.
There's honestly a lot of both.
Yeah.
So on offense, we had Josh Rosen, Devontae Parker, Laramie Tunsil, Mike Gesicki, Kenyon Drake, Albert Wilson, Chris Reed, and Jordan Mills.
Song just doesn't start off bad.
No, up until like Kenyon Drake, it's actually a pretty decent grouping. But the fall off after that is really bad.
Yeah, I don't know who Jordan Mills or Chris Reed are.
Two genuinely shitty. Oh, the women just won the World Cup.
Oh, that's nice.
I kind of forgot that was a thing.
I didn't think
today.
it was happening this early.
I thought it was at like 3:00.
Same. Good for them.
Shit, I was hoping to watch that today, but oh well.
You can watch the highlights.
Yeah,
all
one
like
highlight.
2 goals
Yeah. But yeah, basically Albert Wilson is like a 5'3" wide receiver who was actually pretty productive last year. Chris Reed and Jordan Mills are fucking they're guys on offensive line. But
Right.
I needed to protect somebody, and they just don't have any good special teamers to protect instead, so that's what we get.
Give me defense.
Mika Fitzpatrick, Raekwon McMillan, Xavier Howard, Charles Harris, Rashad Jones, T.J. McDonald, Jerome Baker, and Devon Godchaux.
Sure. That looks right.
It's a French last name. I don't know how to pronounce it.
Good show. Looks right. Sounds right.
They have a lot of good young players on defense, all the way through Jerome Baker. These are all pretty good young guys outside of Rashad Jones and T.J. McDonald. They're both on the older end of the spectrum. But really, there's not much of note. I mean, they have a pretty good group of linebackers in Baker and Raekwon McMillan. They have a hopeful... they got a young, highly drafted defensive edge prospect in Charles Harris. Minka Fitzpatrick, Xavier Howard are two of, honestly, the best defensive backs in the NFL. And that's pretty much it. The rest of the guys are dudes.
Who do you think would win without revealing who's on the expansion team? The expansion team or the Dolphins?
The expansion team.
Yeah, that's what I think, too.
The expansion team.
Speaking
genuinely.
of which, let's look at the Bills.
This was a team that also took advantage of the 15 total players because they don't got much going on offense. Josh Allen, Deion Dawkins, Quentin Span, Mitch Morse, Cole Beasley, and Robert Foster. Their offensive line fucking
they have
sucks.
Cole Beasley now?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I struggled so much finding players to protect because Josh Allen was the only obvious choice.
Yep.
I tried to just pick whatever average or above defensive or offensive linemen they had, which was only 3. And their receiving core and running backs are so bad, I just picked the 2 best players they had out of everyone. I didn't protect LaShawn McCoy because he is old, not too great anymore, and a shitty person who had some domestic violence issues, and I just don't think the Bills want that headache any longer than they have to.
I agree.
He wasn't even selected for the expansion team.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I picked their fucking fullback over LaShawn McCoy. Because fuck it.
Fuck 'em.
On defense, they had Harrison Phillips, Tremaine Edmonds, Lorenzo Alexander, Kevin Johnson, Micah Hyde, Tre'Davious White, Jerry Hughes, Matt Milano, and Shaq Lawson. All exceptional players in their own right. They were an obvious choice for going heavy on defense and light on offense, just because, man, their defense is actually really fucking good. And their offense sucks.
Give me the Jags.
Jacksonville Jaguars, Nick Foles, Leonard Fournette, A.J. Cann, Brandon Linder, Andrew Norwell, Cam Robinson, Marquise Lee, and D.D. Westbrook. I know they voided all of Leonard Fournette's guarantees and threatened to basically cut his ass, but I still think he's talented enough, even with that injury history, to stay on the team and be one of their top protected players.
Oregon would get more via trade than he would via loss in pension.
Which isn't something we mentioned, but I am sure this expansion team, which I aptly named it the San Antonio Roughnecks, which me and my roommate spent a lot of time trying to decide on city and name. They would be very open to trades of marquee players.
I'm sure they would.
But the thing is, there was a lot of good running backs not protected, because running back is a position where there's always a dude that can perform.
A lot of turnover.
So I don't think Leonard Fournette really would get much on the trade market. But I try to protect most, if not all, of their offensive line and the pretty good young wide receivers that they have there. On defense, very easy. Jalen Ramsey, A.J. Boye, Miles Jack, Telvin Smith, who will not be playing this year, Taven Bryan, Calais Campbell, Yannick Ngakoue, and Ronnie Harrison. Telvin Smith made me think whether or not I was going to change the rules up a bit and just see whether or not, if he was on the... I don't even know what list he would be on, whether it wouldn't be injured reserve. I don't think he would be on the PUP list because he's physically able.
What's his issue right now?
He just has some family issues that he really needed to attend to, and just decided, I'm not giving up on this team, but family comes first. I've had some pretty serious stuff going on with my family that I need to take care of, and I just can't play this year. I'll be back next year, ready to play for the Jags and ready to compete for a Super Bowl.
I know in baseball you have stuff like bereavement leave,
right,
or paternal leave. Like, there's different classifications of leave that open up a roster spot.
But time is also limited on those, correct?
I genuinely do not know. I know for a fact that paternal leave does. I don't know about bereavement leave.
Yeah, I don't know about that either.
Because Trout was on bereavement leave when his brother-in-law died, and he was on bereavement leave for like a while. Like, I want to say, because it was IL plus bereavement leave because he had like that thumb issue, and I want to say he was gone for altogether like a month and a half, and most of that was bereavement leave.
Okay, so it could be bereavement. I'm not entirely sure if there was a death in his family, but I'm sure the NFL, with a player like Telvin Smith, would do something right and be flexible with it. But yeah, they have such a deep defense. I decided that he was a very key piece to keep as well.
I think that's fair.
Let's move on to the Colts, because we have been very slow with this, and we need to get through 8 more teams. Holy shit.
7 more teams.
Sure. Andrew Luck, T.Y. Hilton, Quentin Nelson, Ryan Kelly, Anthony Costanzo, Mark Lewinsky, Jack Doyle, and Braden Smith. I picked basically I picked their entire offensive line because of how important it is to protect Andrew Luck. T.Y. Hilton, who was their key player. Wow.
Francisco Cervelli announces he's done with the catching position after his latest concussion.
Wow.
That's insane.
Do you want to take a non sequitur and talk about this for a bit, or do you want to?
2 minutes tops.
Okay.
I mean,
that's huge because of how important he is to the Pirates. I don't know where else we would play him.
Maybe a second base, first base, left field kind of situation.
He's like 34 though. Like I don't know what he has left in his legs to really play infield.
League.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's a big precedent for teams looking at their catching and for young dudes looking at their catching futures. Catchers is already a position a lot of people transfer out of for first base, a la Buster Posey and Joe Mauer.
Yeah.
But wow, that's crazy.
So I think this just adds more to the rumors that the Pirates have been in talks with the Dodgers for trading Felipe Vasquez to the Dodgers in exchange for Keibert Ruiz, their top catching prospect, plus another player or two. So we'll see.
Bullpen needs to get better.
Yeah, right.
Off with that.
But damn, that's honestly good.
I wonder if that's going to translate into bigger paydays for current catchers.
Probably.
That's what I would think.
Honestly, good for Savelli for focusing on his health.
Yeah.
I hope he stays with the team, obviously.
I hope he does. Everyone loves
love
Savelli.
him as a
He's
player
so
and as a
great.
person.
Yeah.
And best of luck to him and his health.
Same. Yeah. Stand-up dude. One of the most likable men in baseball. Good for him for realizing what he needs to do.
Love you, Francisco. But let's get back to the Colts. So I protected their full offensive line because of how important it is to protect Andrew Luck. T.Y. Hilton because of how fucking good he is. And Jack Doyle because I think he adds a more complete tight end over Eric Ebron. And I just genuinely, because they have Jacoby Brissett, I wasn't too terribly worried about who I was going to protect for the Colts when it came down to it, just because we'll talk about this in the third episode with Brissett, but he was the obvious pick for the Colts. And they had such depth at running back, I didn't feel the need. Losing like Marlon Mack would really affect them all too much.
Yeah, I think Jack Doyle is a fine choice as well, especially because Ebron had one great season here, but I don't think you want to bank on that.
And Doyle's been great for a couple years.
Yeah, Doyle's got a little bit more history.
He's such a good blocking tight end as well.
Yep, so I think that's fair.
More complete player. Defense, we had Darius Leonard, Malik Hooker, Quincy Wilson, Jabal Sheard, Justin Houston, who I forgot was on the Colts, Kenny Moore, Jahad Ward, and Denico Autry. Defense was a little harder just because of how much they focused on defense in the draft this year. But basically, I just took all their young stars and Justin Houston because, man, Justin Houston still should have something in the tank. But again, I didn't worry too much about who the Colts were going to protect just because Jacoby Brissett was the obvious pick there. And I actually didn't know anyone after Justin Houston, so Kenny Moore, Jahad Ward, Denico Autry. I didn't know much about them, so it was hard to really decide. I can't believe
someone named their kid Denico.
I'm surprised someone named their son Jihad.
Oh, yeah.
Granted, I know that has a deeper meaning in Arabic and with the Islamic faith. Still kind of a rough name to go through like middle school with.
Texans.
Texans. Deshaun Watson, DeAndre Hopkins, Will Fuller, Kiki Kuti.
Wait, Will Fuller? Oh, wait, no. Who am I? I'm thinking Willie Snead. I was going to say, I thought he was on.
They have the same hair.
Yeah, plus that first name.
That's true.
Yeah.
Nick Martin, Donta Foreman, Julian Davenport, and Sinio Calamite. Calamite? I don't know. I protected 3 wide receivers for the Texans because their receiving core is
team.
So fucking good.
And they have no offensive line.
No offensive line. It's really, really bad how bad their offensive line is. They addressed it in the draft this year, so I didn't have to protect everyone. But it'll be rough to see how that offensive line performs. I picked Donta Foreman over what's his name, Lamar Miller, just because Lamar Miller is just old, and even though he's always produces,
it's
he's
never
kind of a
impressive.
jag. Yeah, like he really does seem like on the fence between jag and like franchise running back.
No, his productions can be made up from the draft or free agency pretty readily. He's nothing. I don't want to say he's nothing special because he's been a special player in his career, but he's at this point in time he's nothing that they have to worry about protecting in favor of somebody else.
Right. Yeah, Texans offense, get some fucking offensive line. On defense, much easier. J.J. Watt, Jadeveon Clowney, Whitney Merciless, Benrick McKinney, Justin Reed, Jonathan Joseph, DJ Reader, and Zach Cunningham. The only guy who I really didn't know if I really wanted to keep him was Jonathan Joseph, just because he's in his 30s, but he's still been a reliable corner for the past couple years, and they don't have many other corners to work with. They let Kevin Johnson walk, who was their first-round pick a couple years ago, who I kept for the Bills because he is a good young cornerback. But, man, their front seven is disgusting.
That's been their strategy.
We don't know if Jadeveon Clowney is going to stay with the Texans this year or if they're going to trade him. But
to the Jets.
To the Jets, yeah. I've heard a lot of that. But
to the Jets.
To the Jets. But, yeah, that's that.
All right, final division. Tell me about them Chiefs.
I just found a mistake.
Oh, wait, nope. I skipped the Titans entirely.
Good, because I found a mistake in the Chiefs, and I don't remember what I did. So can you pull up the Our Lads page for the Chiefs roster, please?
Our Lads Chiefs roster.
Yes. So for the Titans, we have Marcus Mariota, Corey Davis, Taylor Lewan, Roger Saffold, Jack Conklin, Jonnu Smith, Derrick Henry, and Ben Jones. So again, I wanted to keep that offensive line together because they do have a very good offensive line. Corey Davis and Derrick Henry are their two young position players I wanted to keep. Marcus Mariota, good player. I love him so much. I am very much biased against him. I want him to perform well this year. I don't know if he is, but you got to keep your quarterback. And I ended up keeping Jonnu Smith over Delaney Walker because
Walker's just so old.
Walker's very old, and Jonnu Smith kind of seemed to take the reins from him in part last year. I think that was the beginning of the end for Delaney Walker. On defense, we had Kevin Byard, Harold Landry, Adoree Jackson, Jarrell Casey, Rashaan Evans, Daquan Jones, Jayon Brown, and Wesley Woodard. They have a lot of young key pieces on that defense, and they have Jarrell Casey and Daquan Jones to really be those veteran leaders, and I think that fits really well. Can you say something about the Titans at all for a minute while I figure out who I fucked up with on the Chiefs?
I have nothing to say about their defense. Their offense, pretty much all I have to say is about Marcus Mariota because he has not been what everyone wanted him to be and what he still could end up being. But when it comes to something like dealing with an expansion draft, which is what we saw with the NHL a couple years ago, and what we'll see with the NHL again at some point in time, I think early next season, early next year, is that you can't just give up on players because they haven't met their expectations as of yet. That goes for most players most of the time, but especially when you're talking about losing a player for nothing. And I think Mariota has enough cachet within the Titans organization and with the Titans fan base, and has enough general skill in the NFL world that you wouldn't want to give up on him just yet. He's still a dude that could end up being good enough that you give him a second contract. He's definitely not a guy that the Titans will keep offering 1-year deals to. He'll be a guy that will get a second contract from a team, whether it's Tennessee or not. But he's certainly a guy that they should be doing their best to stick with and improving rather than just kind of letting him walk for nothing. Yeah, that's all I really got. Derrick Henry I also think is very good. He's gigantic.
He is gigantic.
He's very, very big.
I personally don't have a lot of faith in Derrick Henry. I think he had those 200-yard games last year, and that's what everyone is focusing on about him being good now. I don't think that's true.
He can be good.
Right, but we'll see what happens with their new head coach.
They should make him a guard.
Actually, no, never mind. I got that backwards.
Offensive coordinator.
New
right?
offensive coordinator. I don't know. We'll see. So the Chiefs. Just to be clear, there's a mistake here where Damian Williams was protected and also picked by the expansion team. So I have a feeling I'm just going to pick a different player for the expansion team.
That's fair.
Just because I protected Damian Williams for a reason. The problem will just be who the fuck do you take from the Chiefs? Because that's going to change a lot of things around. But we have Patrick Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, Mitchell Schwartz, Eric Fisher, Travis Kelce, Sammy Watkins, Austin Reeder, and of course Damian Williams. I have no idea what's going on with Tyreek Hill, but they haven't announced his actual suspension yet, correct?
They have not, and I believe his girlfriend dropped the charges.
She did.
Yeah.
The rumor has been 4 games, which shouldn't be enough to really no longer protect Tyreek Hill. But it really was just trying to hold together a few key pieces of that offensive line. The bookends, very good tackles in Mitchell Schwartz and Eric Fisher. And I believe it's their left guard in Austin Reeder. Because I have it open, he is their center. My mistake. Sammy Watkins, I protected just in case of a Tyreek Hill. He's still a good player, although never lived up to those expectations. And outside of that, there's not a lot of really key players on that offense. They are honestly a shallow but really good team.
Yeah, very top-heavy in their production.
On defense, we have Kendall Fuller, Tyrann Mathieu, Reggie Ragland, Frank Clark, Chris Jones, Darren Lee, Alex Okafor, and Chavarius Ward. Again, pretty top-heavy. All the way, those top 5 guys are all very good. Reggie Ragland is severely underrated. But Chavarius Ward is a good depth cornerback. Alex Okafor is good along that defensive front 7. Darren Lee, although Josh might have other things to say about him, I think is still a good young linebacker.
No, I like him a lot.
You do? Okay,
yeah.
good.
I've always been a fan of his.
He very much improved last season.
I think so too.
So yeah, that's the Chiefs for you. I will figure out what to do with that last Chiefs selection. But this I will lock in as the team they are protecting because that very much comes first before the expansion team. So with the Broncos, we have Drew Lock, Cortland Sutton. Fuck, I should not have protected Drew Lock. He is a rookie. Don't do this at 3 a.m., people. So we have Cortland Sutton, Deshaun Hamilton, Philip Lindsay, Garrett Bowles, Ronald Leary, Jawan James, and Connor McGovern. I'm going to go ahead and protect... in your opinion, Josh, would you rather protect another running back or wide receiver for this team? Or would you protect Joe Flacco and say, fuck it?
How many years does Flacco have left on his contract? Do you know?
2?
I guess I would protect Joe Flacco because they did just trade for him, and if you lost him for nothing, then that would suck a lot of ass.
Okay. I will take your opinion.
I wouldn't feel great about it because it's Joe Flacco, but
and he's not good.
Logistically it would make sense.
Yeah. I did want to say I wasn't going to have contracts be a part of this, but at the same time, as a front office, if you just threw all that to get Joe Flacco, chances are you want to keep Joe Flacco.
This gigantic paycheck.
Especially since I predict Drew Lock will take a good amount of time to come into his own. And I don't think they want to rush a quarterback into things. So we'll take Joe Flacco. But again, protect that offensive line. Cortland Sutton and Deshaun Hamilton. I love those guys. I think they're a great wide receiver duo. I did not pick Emmanuel Sanders to be protected.
Emmanuel.
Thank you for doing that. I miss hearing that. He's in his 30s. He's still a very productive wide receiver, but an Achilles injury is the most serious injury for NFL players and athletes in general, outside of dislocated knees or dislocations, just because that comes with a lot of tearing of ligaments. But on its own, an Achilles tear is very difficult to come back from, especially with a planting foot. So I don't have a lot of high hopes with Emmanuel Sanders coming back and his ability to reproduce. And I just think Philip Lindsay... Oh, okay. Oops. Freudian slip there.
His ability to reproduce. Ask his wife.
So he actually tore his Achilles and had a little snip down there.
Oh, that didn't stop, what's his face?
Michael Scott?
No,
Philip Rivers?
No, the former Jet.
Oh, Antonio Cromartie.
Yeah, Crow, yeah, with his 14 offspring.
I genuinely think it's more than 14.
It is 14.
Is it? Okay. Yeah.
Not that it needs to be.
Yeah,
more,
like
so
it's
many fucking kids.
14 children.
It's 14 kids with like 10 different women or some shit like that.
It's fucking wild. But I picked Philip Lindsay over Royce Freeman just because he showed a lot more in his rookie season, and I think he has a lot more to his game than Royce Freeman. Let's see. I actually don't know who I picked for the Broncos in the expansion team, but I think Royce Freeman would be a good pick.
We can get there later.
Yeah, I just wanted to double check things. Okay, I know who I picked, and I would not be picking Royce Freeman over him. On defense, we have Von Miller, Bradley Chubb, DeMarcus Walker, Bryce Callahan, Kareem Jackson, Will Parks, Josie Jewell, and Shelby Harris. They have a very good group of edge rushers in Von Miller and Bradley Chubb. I would say, outside of the Browns, the best in the league. And they just have a lot of young key pieces all over the rest of their defense. So I really just tried to pick and choose a little from everywhere and try and keep that defense young because they will not be competing in the next few years, to be very blunt with some Broncos fans.
Yep.
So I'm fine moving on to the Chargers if you are.
Yeah, tell me about the Chargers.
Keenan Allen, Phillip Rivers, Mike Williams, Melvin Gordon, Hunter Henry, Mike Pouncey, Forrest Lamp, and Russell Okung. Just a lot of key pieces around Phillip Rivers. A lot of skill position players there just because of how good they are. And just tried to pick the best three from that offensive line to hold Phillip Rivers together as he gets older.
Yeah, this is a pretty disgusting offense. All these choices are just, beautiful.
From a fantasy perspective, not including offensive line, they are one of the best in the league.
Yeah. No, they are. This must have been a very easy offense for you to pick from.
Yeah.
Remember people from.
Outside of offensive line was the hardest part was deciding who to leave out.
Yeah.
So let's move on to defense. Desmond King, who I will stand from the top of mountains and shout to the world that I was right for saying he was a good player and should have been picked earlier. Casey Hayward, one of the top defensive cornerbacks, in the world. And fuck me, I've been talking way too much this episode, and I'm not used to doing it, and I'm falling apart here.
You got this, bud.
So Desmond King, Casey Hayward, one of the top cornerbacks in the league. Derwin James, who is honestly would argue is the best safety in the league already. Denzel Perryman, Joey Bosa, Melvin Ingrams, Trevor Williams, and Uchenna Nwosu. Phenomenal defense. So many key pieces all over. They have edge rushers, they have defensive linemen, they have linebackers, they have safeties, they have cornerbacks. They were able to absolutely crush the Ravens offense in the wild card or division round last year. I don't remember specifically which, but this is a
wild card because they lost to the Pats in the divisional round.
Thank you very much, Joshua Tracy, everyone. Tremendous defense trying to keep them together. Next, we have the Las Vegas Raiders when they will actually be playing. What is it, 2020 they're going over there?
Yes. This season is the last season they'll be in the Coliseum.
And then next season they will be, the 2020-2021 season will be in Las Vegas.
So on offense, John Gruden will be protecting Derek Carr, Antonio Brown, Terrell Williams, Colton Miller, Rodney Hudson, Gabe Jackson, Trent Brown, and Richie Incognito. I picked their entire offensive line because it's actually pretty decent, and their skill position players suck. Terrell Williams, just because they don't have any running backs worth protecting. They don't have any tight ends worth protecting. They don't have any other wide receivers worth protecting. And then, of course, Derek Carr, Antonio Brown.
Yep.
On defense, we have Maurice Hurst, Arden Key, Brandon Marshall with 1 L, LaMarcus Joyner, Carl Joseph, Jonathan Hankins, Garyon Connolly, and Tahir Whitehead. This was actually kind of hard just because, yeah, they have a lot of good young players, but they also have a lot of older guys that really are the only good veterans they have on that team. So I figured it was important to have at least a couple of them, like LaMarcus Joyner and Brandon Marshall. I was stuck at linebacker between Tahir Whitehead and my former high school classmate, Jason Kabinda, who also was a Penn Stater, who Tahir Whitehead wasn't as good as Kabinda was last year. Kabinda played a lot less games, so that might just be a sample size issue. And Tahir Whitehead was a second-round pick, so I figured that front office would just absolutely protect Whitehead ahead of him. So there it is. That is the AFC. Josh, do you have any closing thoughts on any of these 16 teams that we just talked about for the past hour and a half?
Not so much. I mean, this is a big undertaking in part because there's a lot of teams, there's a lot of availability and thought that goes into who is going to get protected, who's going to get left behind. There's a lot of positions, there's a lot of players. This is a really just a big undertaking, which is why we decided to divide it as much as we have.
Mm-hmm.
So the next episode will be focusing entirely on the NFC. But no, I think this is a good part one to a build up to see what this team ends up actually this expansion team ends up actually looking like.
I just want to add on to what you just said. This isn't just about picking the best players. In football, you really got to worry about depth at position. So you really have to spread the love around and can't go too heavy at one spot. And I know this will probably never happen with the same guidelines that we have with this, which are honestly not a lot. But you know what? This is what we have. We don't have the kind of information that NFL front offices do. We don't get to watch these players as much as NFL front offices do. We're not professional NFL scouts as much as I like to think I am for the college level. So this is just the way it is. If you don't like it, suck it.
And then tune in on Thursday for our next episode.
Absolutely.
Until then, y'all can reach us via Twitter at JuicingPod. You can hit us up via email at juicingthenumbers@gmail.com. And you can hit up our website to see this full list and previous episode show notes at juicingthenumbers.wixsite.com/website. So until our Thursday edition to this piece, y'all have a good one.
Thanks.